Hello. Welcome to my booktube channel, Changeling Reader. If you're new here, my name is Adrian, and if you are not, if you're a returnee, welcome back. It's good to see you. Everyone, feel free to take a seat, take a load off your feet, get a drink. Today, we are doing my January and February wrap-up because I wasn't able to do a January one. And by the time I was getting through stuff and dealing with things, I was already more than halfway through February, so I was like, you know what? I decided that I would save the January wrap-up and stuff for the end of February, because by the point where I was getting to it, it was already almost a week into February, and I was like, I haven't even filmed all of it yet. And there were some errors, so I knew I would have to refilm it anyways, so here we are. Yes, to start, I read 8 books across January and February. Correction, I read 9 books in February and January. In January and February. Not counting any of the other class readings, aside from, I think, one that was a whole book. But I did read a lot more, it's just not complete books. And then I put down or put aside 2 books for later. So let's actually start with those. So the first one is The Book of the Dead by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. Yeah, I ended up putting this down because I had barely started it, and then I was randomly looking through the back, and there was a note from the 2 authors where they talked about what was the best order to read these, and this is technically not a first book. I think you could still read it by yourself, but as they say in this note, they talk about the Pendergast novels, and says that The Book of the Dead is the last culminating novel in the Diogenes trilogy. For greatest enjoyment, the reader should read at least Dance of Death first, which then says, above that, Dance of Death is the middle novel of the Diogenes trilogy. While it can be read as a standalone book, readers may wish to read Brimstone before Dance of Death. And then it keeps going backwards, so I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna get the first couple books, try those, and if I like them, I'll get to this through all the rest. But if I don't like those, I'll get rid of those, but then donate this wherever. So yeah, I put that down. And then in January, I put down Charles Dickens's The Pickwick Papers. Not for any particular reason of me disliking it or not enjoying it. It's just, at the time, I had a lot of other stuff going on. I had other things I wanted to read, and it's a longer book. And I just was like, I'm not currently feeling like a long Dickensian classic at the moment. So I was just like, I'm gonna put it down for later. Which so far I'm glad I did, because I have been able to get through a lot more stuff since putting it down. I'm setting it aside for now to read in the future when I have a bit more time and thought and mental energy, I guess, for this. I guess it's the aspects of this alongside everything else I was reading also. So when I don't have, something like Infinite Jest in the works, would be a good time to pick this up, I guess is what I'm meaning in that. But yes, and then in January, the first book I finished was Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, and Other Stories. Honestly, I have a long review video on this because I was specifically doing Flannery O'January stuff that got that footage is still fine probably, but because of the complete screw up and disaster that was the vlog of a week of me reading this, I just haven't been wanting to deal with any of that footage since. But yeah, this is okay. It's fine. I think I truly liked 3 of the stories. 2 of them I actively was like, don't like this. And then the rest were meh. My favorite was The River. That all said, if anyone does want to see the longer, full-form review of this I did, let me know. I can still edit it and post it. It's just, we'll be back in my back home at my dad's house. But yeah, this, I just gave it, I think 3 stars on Goodreads. In January, I had 2 books I finished that I rated 4 stars, 1 5-star, and 1 3-star. So this is the 3-star of January. And then it depends on if I finish the moving vlog before or after this. That it'll probably be in the moving vlog will come out first. But in that you will see I worked on this, The Great Hunt, and I finished this on the way here to Grinnell. And I really liked it. Gave it 4 stars. Not sure what to say. It's been a little while since I finished this. But it definitely made me want to continue reading, but not immediately, which is why I haven't picked up The Dragon Reborn yet. Yeah. Ooh. And then I had kind of briefly started and was working on Beartown, as you'll see in the vlog. Or as you saw in the vlog. Yes, as far as this, I think I'm going to turn it over to Past Me, because I had a lot more to say, and I liked that bit of footage, which is why I saved it and scrapped the rest, because I filmed it at a different time, because I, at the time, believed I was going to be losing my copy, because returning it to the book club, but then, as you will see in later vlogs, I found out I could actually get it from the library where it was donated. I'm so happy to have this. Yes, and I'm gonna shut Present Me up for now and let Past Me take over to talk about this book, which was the only 5-star book in January. The day I'm recording this is the day of the book club, when I am going to be returning this book and getting a different book, because this isn't my copy, it's the book club's. So, yeah, that's why I'm recording it now. But yes, in January, I read Beartown. This is a book that it's hard to say how you feel about it. A little bit. I just, let me just start with just saying, I think it's phenomenally written. I love this book, but not because it did something that endeared me to it, I guess. No, I love this book in the way that it made me care so much that I fully had visceral reactions. Like, the night I finished it, this book moved me a lot. There was a point where I was almost about to be completely overwhelmed with the amount of feelings I was going through, because I was outraged, ready to, like, fight to protect some of these characters I cared about, horrified and shocked at what was happening with other characters, worried, concerned, ready to sob because of just what happens. Like, yeah. This book was phenomenal. I was panting. I was like getting hit. I had to put the book down several times. I full on cheered for some of the actions, which made me realize that I am. If I become a parent, I may have much more of a possibility of becoming like Kira than I initially thought, because there's a moment in the book, I think, without putting it in context, it's not spoilers, but Kira chasing after some people in a car. That moment I full on was like, yes, run them down off the road. Until I was informed that they were what those people were. But I mean, I was still like, they shouldn't have done what they did. And yeah. Cause, oh my goodness. I cried. Not at the ending of this. In the end, I was actually like, oh, good for her. Like, had it coming. I'm being very vague because I didn't know much about this, aside from it being about a lot of hockey and there being assault at some point that would be relevant. If anyone is thinking of picking it up based off of my talking about it, I think it's good to include some content warnings. Because it's, first off, there's the assault and discussion around that, which I think should be acknowledged because some people might not be able to handle that. I had several moments where I had to stop reading because I was going to get so upset or not be able to do anything if I continued. But there's that. Then I would say parental grief in various ways. If you're not a fan of cursing or what some would consider just locker room talk jokes, there's a lot of bullying that happens, violence, stuff that covers homophobia, transphobia, a lot of different forms of bigotry, racism against one of the characters that's not necessarily focused on, but it's still relevant. Basically anything that could come up in a small town where shame and silence are virtues. But I loved so many of the characters. And I'm going to absolutely need to get my own copy because I want to reread it and mark it up because there were so many great lines and the commentary is so great on a lot of things. I think it is worth reading this book because it hurts you in a necessary way. And I think that this book is going to stick with me for a long time. Sorry, I was not expecting to actually get choked up and start crying a little bit on doing this real quick, but here we are. Yeah, there's language that you're gonna have to get across because there's a lot of that's the other thing I didn't include is there's misogyny where it's kind of covering how parents should be, and there's a lot of language that you'd expect in a town that would even put hockey over religion. Well, hockey is their religion, I should say. I will say there's a lot of rough and more vulgar language that is not common, but there are enough moments. There were some times where I don't know if it was the intended reaction, but there was a joke told or something said by some of the guys on the sports team where I know I've heard it before, where it's just jokes, it's just teasing, and I had to set the book down because I was hit with just a hard panic in my chest. But I would not care. I would not be reacting as I am even now, as I did, if I did not care about the characters in this book. Some of them felt so real to me that I had a moment where I was like, I hope your kid ends up hating hockey. But it's like they're a fictional character. Or being like, I'm with you, stuff like that. God, I don't have time to get choked up and then have to re-record me. So, like, I don't have time because I have to finish up a paper before the book club meeting tonight. Yeah. I love this book so much. I gotta read more Bachman and the rest of the books in the trilogy. But not for a good while, because yes, this was good, but also I need to give my heart some time and read some other stuff before I go to another Bachman. But yeah, I think this is a book worth reading, even if it makes you uncomfortable, or if you are not triggered but discomforted. I think that is in large part the point, because you should be uncomfortable with this. You should be upset. I was ready to go after people because of what's going on in this book. But that said, I'm gonna move on, or I guess let future me continue where I will not be as teary-eyed from this book, which 10 out of 10, but yeah, moving on. Okay, I think you passed me. You weren't expecting me to do it that way. I think I even had planned to have like a dummy book in the original January wrap-up video, but then all the other stuff happened. Anyways, next, really quickly after that, the last book I read in January was A Short Course in Kindness by Margot Silk Forest. This was 4 stars. I really liked it. It definitely, it has some lessons on kindness, but for myself, I found it a bit more of an encouraging book, like a book that encourages someone to continue being kind, to embrace kindness. But that's just because I already view kindness as like an ultimate good, and it's better to be kind than nice, stuff like that. So I really appreciated this, and I do think a lot of people could benefit from reading this little book. It's a pretty quick read. It might not land well for everyone, especially because there are some like religious or spiritual aspects that kind of landed somewhat for me, not necessarily in like a wholly religious sense, but I am someone who has like a spiritual, religious leaning somewhere. Let me put it this way, I have a spiritual bone in my body somewhere that kind of tunes into that sort of thing a bit. It's why I'm interested in studying, learning about other religions, and I was going to go to a paganist meeting, and then I completely messed up times and stuff. But yes, this was good, and I would say that it's worth giving a shot if you are someone interested in making the world a better place. Yes, so that is all I read in January. Now in February, I did not have any 5-star reads. I almost did, but no luck. I will say though that we have 2 4 stars, 1 3 star. I think I was like, it could be 3.5 or something like that. And then 1 barely 2 star. I don't want to talk about it much. But, oh wait, I completely blinked on one because I don't have the physical copy of Before the Coffee Gets Cold. But yeah, so the first book I read in February was Ongoingness, The End of a Diary by Sarah Manguso. This was for my diaries and journals class where we're studying the genre. And it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. It both made me want to continue writing in my diary more, but also like kind of spoke to some of the like panicked parts of me about forgetting things, not writing down stuff to keep a record of the stuff in my life. And it was a little reassuring, but also kind of fed into that a little at the same time. But I appreciated that because I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have an aspect of like wanting to keep track of as much of your life as you can. But if it gets to the point where it's becoming damaging to yourself when you're not actually living in those moments you're trying to record, then it gets a bit problematic. But this was good. It's her talking about, like, she goes through a journey of talking about how she worked on diaries and was a bit obsessive, and then eventually was like on becoming a mother, realized that she's just living, she's ongoing, and is going to embrace ongoingness. And so thus she now has a different record of her life in her son or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But that was very interesting. So yeah, there's the ongoingness. And then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold. In one sitting. It was really simple. Not a big fan. It was okay. That's right. I was thinking about star ratings. So I had 2 4 stars, 1 3 star, 1 barely 2 stars, and then I gave Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I think it was either 3 stars or 2, but I made a note that was like, it's more 2.75. It was okay. Not the best thing I've read, not the worst. Definitely. I'm really glad, actually, that I got a mix of reviews. I had a friend who was like, I have no words for how much I dislike this book, and wished that she could give it less than 1 star. So, and then there were people who I knew were like, it's amazing, 5 stars. But yeah, to use a line that one of my friends said that they could make a drinking game out of for taking a shot every time I said it during the book club meeting. One of the big issues I had is that the characters were flat until the plot needed them to become rounded. Like, there's even a point where I think Kazu is described as forgettable, having nothing interesting. Like, she's kind of described as a flat character in the first place. And then suddenly, when it becomes necessary to have events go forward for the plot, she suddenly is like, oh, I care, or oh, I'm speaking up. And there was a lot of, like, things that happened where it's like, if there had been build-up and, like, character there in the first place, it would have been more impactful. But it just suddenly seemed like, oh, now they have something that they care about, or oh, now they're doing something, so now they are not flat. But it wasn't bad, right? Like, there was stuff that I enjoyed a little. I was so disappointed in the ghost never going anywhere. I was one of the I think of the people in the book club who finished it, I was one of the ones who rated it highest. I don't think the book got above 3 stars at all from anyone in the book club, because everyone, like, 2 people didn't finish it. Like, one just kept forgetting about it, and then the other, who is the leader of the book club currently, was like, yeah, I could sit down and read it through it and it was simple, but then it was just like I didn't care, and it was like forgettable. And then there was so much things where it was like to the point where she felt like she had to start keeping notes of who is who, and that it was like repetitive in an unnecessary way, which I agree. It's the repetitiveness of it, like the amounts of times and stuff. And there were definitely things where I can see where people are like, oh yeah, it was definitely like emotional and stuff like that, because there were parts that I did tear up at. But the thing for me, the issue I had, is that I felt that even outside of the book, if I were to just read those sections without the rest of the book, I would still tear up. So it's like, come on, if the whole book can, like, the rest of the book can be ignored and that spot can still make me tear up, that actually speaks worse to the rest of the book, because then what is the rest of the book doing? You know? And I can see how it could work for some people, especially if you're, like, more interested in this, if you're not familiar with some time traveling conventions, which people said it was a new quirky way of doing it, which I was like, no, it's not. I predicted the loopholes. I even figured out what was going on before we got there, and it was just kind of And the ghost. What was the point of the ghost? She was just there. Like, in the first chapter or whatever, the lovers, there's so much more set up, and I was like, oh, what's going on with her? But then it doesn't go anywhere. Sorry, we're getting into a bit of spoiler territory there with all that. But yeah, also, the author doesn't even respect what the characters are doing, so we don't even get to see the way the narrative is told change to accommodate how the characters supposedly change, because there's the point for specific reasons where a character decides to take on a different name for a very supposedly emotionally significant reason, but the book continues calling her the previous thing. And it was like, so you wrote this whole section about why she's doing this, and then you're not going to respect that? But yeah, so at the end of the book club meeting, we all were like, yep, pretty sure this is the worst book we've read in the book club so far. Because at least with, I think the second worst is 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And that there were actually people who had some enjoyment, and I think there was at least higher than 3-star ratings for that. Yeah. But anyways, moving on from that mess. Next, after that, before that, I had briefly started Summerlong, I think. No, after that, because that was after I got sick. But I started and then finished Summer Long, which I gave 3-ish, somewhere around there, stars. It was good. Definitely, the ending is a bit. I believe I talk about it more in a specific vlog, in more specifics. But I will say I think this functions much better as kind of a what not to do in a marriage, or because a lot of this I felt like a lot of the issues this married couple had were because they weren't talking to each other, not just talking, because they do talk to each other, but I mean like communicating, actually taking in and working on the relationship together. And I will say there's definitely a lot of I don't want to say spicy, because that implies that it's like enjoyable, or it's like, oh, it's spicy. There's a lot of sexual content inside this that you should be aware of, as well as cursing, stuff like that. But I do think it was well written, and I definitely got some interesting things out of it. I definitely found this better than Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is why I ended up giving Before the Coffee Gets Cold 2.75 stars, because I was like, if I view this as like a 3-ish, maybe a little more book, then I need to lower Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because this was definitely much more impactful in a lot of ways. Didn't make me depressed a few times, but it didn't have the effect it had on one of my other friends, where she said it made her not want to get married. I disagree. It just made me recognize that there are some things that you should do in a relationship that these guys were not doing. And I was like, yeah, maybe I couldn't do better, work with a partner in a way. Maybe even just have them read this and be like, we're not going to do that, okay? We're going to talk to each other. Yeah. Also, there's loads of infidelity. And some death and suicidal ideation. All that, yeah. Okay, and then in the last 2 days of February, which is why I did not film this wrap up before the end of February, because I knew, or I know myself and know that there have been many times where the last day of the month I finish a book. Yes, I finished 2 books. On the 27th, I finished 100 Cupboards. I freaking loved this. It was good to return to after a while away from it. Definitely had some nostalgia to it, and my rating of 4 stars reflects that a bit. But I can't believe people say this is slow-paced. Like, it's this thin, and stuff starts happening, like, it doesn't even take 100 pages before a lot of stuff starts happening with the cupboards and stuff like that. So I don't see how people can call it slow-paced. Maybe I could see medium-paced. I think I said that because I was like, yeah, there's some slower moments, but like slow-paced. Are you serious? This is why I'm now going to be like, I don't know if I can take Storygraph's pacing seriously with this and the next book. But yeah, but also reading it older, there's a lot of things that I appreciate even more, where I was like, oh my god, I completely didn't think about that. But it hit so much better, like when the couple that Henry, the main character, is going to live with, his aunt and uncle, Dottie and Uncle Frank. And I just found this section really sweet, and it kind of made me like feel a bit more. So it says, people liked Dottie. They said she was interesting. They rarely did the same for her husband. They said Mr. Willis was thin, and they didn't just mean physically. They meant thin everywhere and every way. Dottie saw much more than thin, and she liked him. Frank Willis didn't seem to notice much of anything beyond that. And I don't know why, but reading that hit, poked my heart and made me choke up. Even reading it just now, I felt myself choke up a little bit. And there's a lot of good things. I will say Henrietta is just so obnoxiously stupid. Like, if people rate it lower because of her, I can see why, because almost all of the problems come because of her and her just being plain dumb. I get that she's like a rash girl who gets it from her father, definitely, because I love the sections where he's trying to get into the grandfather's room, because they're always funny, and the way he talks about it. I didn't expect to be so fond of Uncle Frank in these books upon reread, but I really like him. Like, it's strange how much more I like the adults. That makes it sound like I disliked the adults before, but I didn't think about them much when I read the series when I was younger. But I also appreciate that they're not incompetent in this book. They're dealing with things that it's just not working. The other thing I really like is that it still has a sense of magic to it, and to me at least, it still holds up. And I'm kind of sad to see it rated so lowly on Goodreads. Like, I don't know if it's just me and how I read it that means I view it much more higher. Because some of the books that I was like, it's okay, are rated so much higher than this book when I was like, I loved this. This was really good. It's not phenomenal, and it's not like something that I'm like, oh my god, but it still was like really enjoyable and really hit me. And I'm really excited to continue the rest of it. But yeah, I should look at Goodreads to see, well, should I though? Should I really look at the Goodreads to see the negative things people have to say about this series I dearly love? Because it's not like it's my favorite books, but it's definitely like a childhood favorite closer to my heart. Like, I think this even superseded Harry Potter not superseded, but it was like closer to me and had much more impact in my brain than Harry Potter. Even though I also really loved Harry Potter when I was younger, this still like holds a special place in my heart, and I don't think about Harry Potter as much now. But some of the things in this, like magical doors, weird cupboards, the magic of nature, just a lot of the stuff in these books still, I can, like, thinking on it, I can still see some of it in how I look at the world or think about things now. And I really appreciated that. And seeing that. Especially because I didn't even realize that there's actually a rather healthy marriage in this. Like, Dottie and Frank are adorable sometimes. And I just love them. And I will say, at first, I think some people might be tempted to be like, Uncle Frank's, like, incompetent. He just doesn't act. And there's literally, like, stuff in front of him, and he's like, But then you kind of think about it, and you see him later talking about where he's like, I don't want to restrain him, because he knows Henry's background coming from a place where he's been made to bring a helmet to boarding school for gym classes. Like, he has helicopter parents to the nth degree who aren't present, right? Like, they somehow managed to be helicopter parents without being there. And so, like, Frank is like, I'm gonna let him do some stuff. I'm gonna let him make mistakes. Gonna let him to be a dirty child for some time at least. And of course he's like slapping himself in the head later when he's like, I should have interfered, because there's that, but I didn't want to restrict him. And I was like, oh my god, yes, I totally get you. That's so fair. So I really appreciated that the adults aren't depicted as incompetent fools. It's more that the kids just hide it, or the parents don't want to restrict their kids their kids? Yeah, Henry does kind of become part of the family. Whatever. I'm already working on the second, and I am still really liking it. It's much faster than I remembered too. So people who say it's slow paced on Storygraph, you should change that. I don't know why you thought it was slow paced. Especially because this freaking book, I can't believe there are people on Storygraph who say this is fast paced. So, sorry, just real quick shift. This is the barely 2-star read of the month. I started and finished it February 28th. If you want to see the full journey I had with this book and see my ultimate ending review, I have my Goodreads in the description of this video and a few of the earlier ones. Basically, it's in all of the descriptions of my videos from the point where I actually started being active on Goodreads. Yes, did not care for this. This book, the plot didn't really begin until halfway through the book. We spent 4 chapters in the same place at the same event, and then finally things started being looked at and then being like, oh my gosh, what's going on at this retirement home or whatever. Didn't care for the cats. They're talking cats, which sounds so much better than it's done in this book. Because the cats, their characters, so flat. We're told that the cat who acts like a jerk and he doesn't care and has no feeling for beauty or anything like that, we're just told that he has moments where he stops to sniff a flower or appreciate rolling in nice grass. We're just told that. We don't actually get to see it, so it's kind of feels like we're being told he's actually likable, where it's yes, he's kind of a jerk, but no, he's actually likable. Cause right, I feel if someone spat in my face and then someone was well, actually, he sometimes pets dogs, so he's a good person. That wouldn't make me more, that would just be unimpressive to me. I'd be really? You're trying to make me like this person when I've seen some nasty stuff from them, and then there's things that are relevant to the character that just kind of get dropped, and then they come back at random points. And then things really don't get going until the last 88 pages. And the cats don't even solve it. They stumble into exposing and somewhat solving the mystery and stuff, but it's more they just kind of are oh, there's something there, and oh, there's this thing going on. And then they put stuff, and then the police come and figure it all out, and then we get the explanation from the police officer at the end. And the thing is I had figured out all of it before we even got to those last 88 pages, and I was oh, okay, so the cats are stupid sometimes, but they act like they're not, they're so smart. At least one of them does. I did kind of sometimes think Dulcie was a decent character, interesting to see a cat who has a flair for fancy things and luxury. But that's all she is. And then there's some unnecessary, very, very specific and detailed cat hunting scenes where we get a rabbit getting its throat bit into and blood. So not to get specific, sorry. I get their cats, and yes, I can see having writing in that sort of thing. I read the Warriors books, but this just felt weird, because it feels it's so focused on, and it's not oh, we're doing this for the food or anything like that. It's random. It just kind of felt like violence against their prey sometimes because they're irritated. And I was do I want to animals that are depicted as acting like humans who are violent when they're angry against people weaker than them? That's kind of some of the dynamic that comes across. That's not exactly where I thinking, but it's the best words I have in the moment as I'm trying to record this and talk about it. This was technically a third book. So maybe there's a lot of stuff missing. Maybe there's stuff that makes Joe Gray seem like a better character than he does in this. But here he's just a jerk. And there's no, like, we're told that he's got some redeeming quality in smelling flowers or stuff like that. But even when he's supposedly being nice, it's literally described like it's so much effort in him to just be semi-decent and polite and nice, right? Like it takes so much effort for him, and he's thinking about slicing a little girl's arms apart, like biting and drawing blood. And it's just like, really? I honestly, as someone who's been around a lot of cats, this depiction of them, I can't get behind it. That was not on purpose. I just kind of started dropping it and I didn't care to catch it. But still, they didn't register as cats all of the time. Like, it felt, you know what? Those hunting scenes, I'll say, they felt like a mix of, oh, I want to get like deep and like really describe some gruesome animal killing, but also like the author was like, oh right, they're cats. Like, aside from like the moments where they're like sneaking and stuff, and it's like there are moments where you could almost be like, if this was just a stealthy person, it wouldn't be any different. So I wonder if part of like some of the abrupt things is because the author's like, oh right, they're cats, or oh right, this character's supposed to be grieving, or oh right, this is supposed to be happening. And it just, I couldn't get behind it. It was so slow. I can't remember the full Goodreads review, but I know I was like, there was some sexist and homophobic remarks that I was like, really? You're gonna call people who do good things limp-wristed do-gooders? Like, okay. And mocking just the amount. Yeah. I think I even said in the Goodreads review I wrote that I should have DNF'd halfway like I was thinking. Because by that point, I already had so much of it figured out. And then by the point we were getting to it, the review and the explanation at the end, I was like, are we done yet? Because I was bored. It's boring, and I didn't care about... there wasn't a speck of my heart that cared for any of the characters, so it was just like, okay, are we done? So, I'll probably cut down that ramble a bit, because I've been talking for a good while. Anyways, yes, so, aside from the things I was working on and continuing from these months into this March, I don't have anything else to talk about for books I read in January and February. Yes. So that is all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me in this fun experience. Feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, do whatever you wish. You know, all the things. Feel free to share some comments if you have some things to say. I would love to hear thoughts on some of these books, especially some of the ones that I was like not as big a fan of, to see why y'all love it if you did love it. And maybe even you can, if you've read some of the other ones I've really loved, you can let me know why you weren't as big a fan, because I love to have conversations and hear from people about why they feel the way they do about books. And that's why I started the channel, to talk books and join the community so I could talk about books with people. Yes, I will see you in the next video.